My $12,000 custom ATV, the only thing that gets me to my VA appointments, was stolen right out of my own driveway. And the thief? The 19-year-old daughter of our HOA president. She didn't sneak away in the dark. She live-streamed herself doing donuts in my yard, laughing. They said she was untouchable. They forgot one thing. I'm a combat engineer, and I don't chase thieves. I set traps. That morning started like any other. The desert air was cool, quiet, still. I rolled open my garage door and felt that strange, hollow silence before I even saw it. The space where my ATV should have been was empty. No engine smell, no metal cooling tick, just concrete. For a second, my brain refused to process it. Then I saw the tire marks, deep, fresh, spinning circles carved into my lawn, like someone had signed their name in destruction. And right on cue, like she had been waiting for an audience, Brooklyn Thornfield roared past the front of my house. My ATV beneath her, her phone held high, live stream running. She laughed as she hit the throttle, gravel spraying across my driveway. Behind her, standing by her perfectly trimmed mailbox, was her mother, Delilah Thornfield, president of the Willowbrook Estates HOA. She didn't shout. She didn't pretend to be shocked. She simply smirked. Then she called out, clear as day, "Deal with it." I didn't run after the ATV. I didn't yell. I just stood there. Because something in her smile told me this wasn't just a stolen vehicle. This was a declaration. That was the day everything exploded. But to understand why the HOA president's daughter felt safe stealing medical equipment from a disabled veteran in broad daylight, we need to go back 8 months. Back to the day I thought Willowbrook Estates was going to be my fresh start. 8 months earlier, I believed I had finally found something close to peace. Willowbrook Estates wasn't flashy. 847 homes, clean sidewalks, trimmed hedges, flags that actually came down after the holidays. After 2 tours overseas and months in recovery, quiet felt like a gift. The VA therapist had leaned forward one afternoon and said something simple. "Garrett, build something." I asked her what she meant. She said, "Anything. Something with your hands. Something you control." Control. Afghanistan took my lower leg, but what it tried to take was control. So I bought an old ATV frame from a farm auction outside Mesa. Rusted, bent, forgotten, kind of like me. For 8 months, my garage became my therapy room. I designed custom hand controls because foot pedals weren't an option anymore. Throttle shifted to my left grip, rear brake modified for hand pressure, suspension adjusted to balance uneven weight from the prosthetic. Every bolt I tightened felt deliberate, measured, like I was rebuilding more than a machine. The seat took the longest. I molded it around my prosthetic socket, adjusted angles, reinforced pressure points. The first time I rode it without pain, I didn't celebrate. I just sat there in the driveway and breathed. In the mornings, I'd roll the garage door open before sunrise. Desert air would mix with the smell of engine oil and fresh rubber, creosote from the bushes, cool concrete, gasoline warming in the tank. That smell became freedom. The ATV wasn't recreational. It got me to VA appointments without asking for rides, to the grocery store, across trails where walking long distances wasn't realistic. It gave me independence back. Most neighbors barely noticed. Carlos Vega, the pool guy, once said it looked serious. I took that as a compliment. For a while, life felt steady, predictable. Then, about a week after I registered the ATV, everything shifted. That morning, I'd taken it out early to test a brake adjustment. When I returned, I parked it neatly inside my garage. I left the garage door open. 5 minutes, maybe less. The engine was still warm, ticking softly as it cooled. The heat trapped in the concrete needed to vent. That was all it took. Later that afternoon, a white envelope was taped to my front door. Official HOA letterhead. Violation notice. Bylaw 47C. Unauthorized vehicle storage. $500 per day after 72 hours. I stood there holding the paper, replaying the morning. 5 minutes. Which meant she had been watching, not casually driving by. Watching. I pictured her SUV creeping down the street, window lowered just enough to document evidence. Or maybe she'd been waiting for someone like me, someone who didn't fit her idea of neat compliance. I read the notice again. The language wasn't neutral. It wasn't informational. It was sharp, almost eager. That was the first time I saw her name printed in bold. Delilah Thornfield, HOA, President. And in that moment I understood something. This wasn't about a vehicle. It was about power. In Willowbrook Estates, the quiet wasn't peace. It was surveillance. And I had just given her 5 minutes of daylight. That was all she needed. I didn't panic. That might surprise you. After 2 tours overseas, a letter taped to a door doesn't raise my pulse the way it might for someone else. It sharpens it. I went back inside and read Bylaw 47C carefully. Twice. It applied to commercial vehicles, delivery trucks, landscaping trailers, construction equipment. My ATV was registered as a personal mobility vehicle. More than that, I had documentation from the Department of Veterans Affairs classifying it as medically necessary adaptive equipment. Federal disability protections applied. I made copies. Then I checked the HOA website. Next board meeting. Thursday, 6:30 p.m., Community Center. I showed up 10 minutes early. The room smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and stale coffee. Metal folding chairs, a long plastic table at the front, and behind it, Delilah Thornfield. 48, perfect posture, perfect hair, perfect smile that never reached her eyes. She wore authority the way some people wear perfume, light, but unmistakable. When my violation came up on the agenda, she read it calmly. Unauthorized vehicle storage visible from public roadway. Visible, that word again. I raised my hand. Ma'am, I said evenly. The garage door was open for 5 minutes. The vehicle is ADA protected adaptive equipment. I have documentation. I handed copies to each board member. You could hear the paper shift in their hands. Delilah didn't look down. She looked at me. Mr. Steele, she said with a polite smile. Recreational vehicles are recreational vehicles. We must maintain standards. It's not recreational, I replied. It's how I get to my VA appointments. A quiet ripple moved through the room. Then the door at the back opened. Heels against linoleum. Unhurried. Brooklyn Thornfield walked in like she was entering a stage. 19. Designer sneakers. Phone already raised. She angled her camera toward me. Mom, she said loudly, is this the military guy you were telling me about? A few nervous chuckles floated around the room. Delilah's smile tightened. We're discussing a resident, she said smoothly, who believes his situation gives him special privileges. Special privileges. I kept my voice steady. I'm asking for equal application of the rules. Bylaw 47C prohibits commercial equipment. I've noticed real estate signage and staging inventory stored inside your garage for years. That changed the air in the room. Board members shifted in their seats. Brooklyn stopped smiling. Delilah's fingers tapped the table once, controlled. That is temporary business material, she said. Entirely different. How? I asked. No one answered. Brooklyn leaned closer to her phone. Guys, she said to her live stream audience, he's comparing my mom's business to his little toy truck. Toy truck. The vote came quickly. 4-3 to table the violation pending review. Not a victory, but not a loss. As the meeting broke up, I gathered my papers slowly. No slammed chairs, no raised voices, just tension hanging in the air. Outside, the evening sun stretched long shadows across the parking lot. I didn't mean to overhear them, but they weren't whispering. Brooklyn laughed first, light, careless. Mom, it's just a toy truck. He's acting like it's some kind of tank. He'll fold, she added. They always do. There was a pause. Then Delilah answered, calm, certain. If he doesn't, we have other options. No threat in her voice, no anger, just confidence. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't about enforcement. It wasn't about neighborhood standards. It was about control. And in Willowbrook Estates, control wasn't negotiated. It was applied. They thought this was about a vehicle. It wasn't. It was about whether I would bend. And I don't bend easily. It didn't start loud. It started quiet. 3 days after the board meeting, my phone buzzed while I was sitting in the VA waiting room. Violation notice. Loud engine disturbance reported at 2:14 a.m. I frowned. My ATV hadn't moved in 2 days. I was at the VA until almost noon. By the time I got home, there were 3 more emails. Oil spill in driveway. Unauthorized mechanical activity. Suspicious late-night noise. All anonymous. All time-stamped while I was either at the VA or asleep. That wasn't coincidence. That was choreography. The next morning, I stepped outside and saw black paint sprayed across the lenses of my 2 exterior security cameras. Not smashed, not ripped down. Spray painted. Clean. Deliberate. Whoever did it knew exactly where the blind spots were. That night, around 10, engines roared down our usually quiet street. Motorcycles, music, laughter that didn't belong in a residential neighborhood. I stepped onto my porch. A lifted dirt bike came first, then 2 more, then a Jeep with oversized tires and underglow lights. Brooklyn wasn't on my ATV. It was locked inside my garage. She was standing on the foot pegs of the dirt bike, phone raised high, recording herself like she was at a tailgate. The bike idled hard in front of my driveway. She revved it. Gravel sprayed across my lawn. A beer can flew through the air and slammed into my garage door. Metal rang like a warning bell. Then she leaned toward my house and shouted over the engine noise. "Nice ATV in there!" Laughter erupted behind her. "Be a real shame if something happened to it." More laughter. The Jeep rolled closer to my driveway, headlights washing over my garage door. They weren't trying to hide. They wanted me watching. I pulled out my phone and called HOA security. The line rang twice. Then her voice answered. "Thornfield residence?" "Not security, Delilah." "Mrs. Thornfield," I said evenly. "There's a noise violation happening on Maple Ridge. Multiple vehicles. Property damage." Silence. Then a slow exhale. "Mr. Steele," she said, syrupy calm, "we've received no such reports." "You can hear it from your porch." Another pause. Longer. "Garrett," she said, using my first name now, "have you spoken to your VA counselor recently?" I didn't respond. "PTSD can cause heightened sensitivity to noise," she continued gently, "even distortions." I felt something go very still inside me. Behind me, another beer can hit the garage, harder. The dirt bike revved again, deliberate. I held the phone out slightly so she could hear it. Silence on her end, then a soft chuckle. "If you feel unsafe," she said, "perhaps Willowbrook isn't the right fit for you." The line went dead. The engine stayed for another hour, circling, revving, not crossing the line, just dancing on it. The next morning, 7 more violation emails arrived, all anonymous, all precise. That's when it stopped being harassment. It became pressure. Economic pressure, psychological pressure. They weren't trying to win. They were trying to exhaust me, make me question my memory, make me doubt my stability, push me into reacting badly. And that was their mistake. Because I've been in environments where pressure is weaponized, where confusion is strategy, where the objective is to make you feel alone. I didn't feel alone. I felt clarity. I walked into my garage, closed the door behind me. The ATV sat exactly where I left it, untouched. For now. They thought this was about a bylaw. It wasn't. It was escalation. And escalation requires preparation. That night, I didn't call security again. I didn't argue. I didn't answer a single violation email. Instead, I opened a toolbox, and I stopped thinking like a homeowner. I started thinking like an engineer. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was afraid, because I was planning. There's a difference. When you've worked around controlled demolitions and field repairs under pressure, you learn something simple. Emotion wastes energy. Preparation wins wars. The next morning, I drove 40 minutes outside the city, paid cash, no receipts tied to my name, trail cameras, military-grade housing, infrared night vision, motion triggered, the kind hunters use when they want to see what moves in the dark. Back home, I mounted them where the old security cameras used to be. Not obvious, not symmetrical, camouflaged along roof lines, hidden inside a hollowed vent cover, one inside a fake irrigation control box near the driveway. Redundancy. If they found one, there would be 3 more. Then I moved to the ATV. I removed the seat, pulled back the custom foam I had shaped months earlier. Inside the steel frame cavity, there was just enough space. I installed a GPS tracker, smaller than a matchbox, 30-day battery, real-time cellular upload, impossible to detect without dismantling the entire chassis. I sealed it back up. No wires visible, no external signal blinking. Then came the kill switch. That part took the longest. I routed a relay into the ignition line, tested it 3 times. On, off, on, off. Then I synced it to an encrypted control app on my phone. 1 tap. Engine dead. Doesn't matter if the key is in. Doesn't matter if they're already moving. 1 tap. Silence. Finally, I rebuilt my surveillance system properly. Every camera fed into a private server in my office. From there, automatic encrypted upload to cloud storage. Not just motion clips, continuous background recording at low resolution. If someone spray painted a lens again, the footage would already be stored off-site. I tested that too. Covered the lens. Checked the upload. Still saved. Redundancy. That's what most amateurs forget. They think 1 layer of protection is enough. It isn't. By midnight, the garage looked the same as it always had. Concrete floor, tool chest, workbench, a TV parked neatly inside. But it wasn't the same. Now it was bait, and I wasn't reacting anymore. I was controlling variables. They thought pressure would make me fold. Instead, it clarified the mission. You don't fight chaos with noise. You fight it with structure. They had declared escalation. They just didn't realize. I was better at it. The first person who knocked on my door wasn't a hero. It was Carlos Vega. He stood there shifting his weight from one boot to the other. Pool maintenance shirt, sunburned neck, nervous eyes. "Mr. Steele," he said quietly, "you got a minute?" I stepped aside. He didn't sit, just stayed near the door like he might need to leave fast. "I've been doing pool contracts in this neighborhood 6 years, he said. "Prices didn't triple overnight, but the invoices say they did." I didn't interrupt. "Every emergency repair," he continued, "goes to Thornfield Management's preferred vendors. Same 3 companies, same inflated pricing." "How inflated?" I asked. He swallowed. $47,000 for a roof patch that should have cost 12. That number stuck. 47,000. "That's not sloppiness," I said. Carlos shook his head. "That's strategy." He hesitated before adding, "People know something's off. They're just scared." "Scared of what?" "Losing contracts, getting violation letters, being pushed out." That afternoon, another knock came. Meredith Hendricks, 73, retired public school teacher, posture straight as a ruler. She carried a manila folder. "I've been waiting for someone stubborn enough," she said. Inside the folder were printouts, emails, board meeting summaries, budget line items highlighted in yellow. She had been keeping records for 3 years. "I taught civics for 32 years, she said. "This isn't governance, it's extraction." That's when I understood. This wasn't harassment, it was a system, and systems leave patterns. 2 nights later, Carlos called me after dark. "Trash pickup is Wednesday mornings," he whispered. "The HOA office dumpsters get rolled out at 10 p.m. We met at 9:45. No headlights, no loud doors. The HOA office sat quiet at the edge of the community center parking lot. Carlos kept watch while I lifted the dumpster lid. The smell hit first. Coffee grounds, paper, cleaning chemicals, then shredded documents, not cross-cut, just strip-cut. Lazy. We worked fast, pulled bags, dumped them in the bed of my truck. 10 minutes, maybe less. A car turned into the lot. Security. Carlos stiffened. "Go," he muttered. We closed the lid gently and walked casually towards separate vehicles. The security SUV slowed, rolled past, kept going. We didn't speak until we were back in my garage. Jake arrived an hour later. Cybersecurity consultant, old army buddy. He laid the shredded strips across my workbench like a puzzle. "Give me a couple hours," he said. At 2:17 a.m., he leaned back in his chair. "Found it. Contract amendment, emergency roofing services, $47,382.16. No competitive bids. Vendor linked to Thornfield Holdings, LLC. Same registered agent as Delilah's real estate brokerage." "That's self-dealing," Meredith said quietly. Jake pulled up county filings on his laptop. "Not just here," he said. "She's listed as management authority in 23 HOA communities across Arizona." 23. I did the math in my head. 47,000 here, 30,000 there. Emergency repairs, landscaping contracts, security services. Conservative estimate? Millions. Carlos exhaled slowly. "She's not just bullying you," he said. "She's feeding off everyone." The garage was quiet for a long moment. The ATV sat behind us, silent, waiting. This wasn't about a violation letter anymore. It wasn't even about intimidation. It was racketeering disguised as neighborhood management. And suddenly, my problem was everyone's problem. That's when Meredith looked at me and said something that changed the direction of the war. "I've already spoken to someone at Channel 12. The room went still. "You're not just fighting a Karen," she continued. "You're standing on top of a story." For the first time since the white envelope appeared on my door, I smiled. Not because I was winning, because the battlefield had just expanded, and Delilah Thornfield had no idea. Cassidy Walsh didn't look like someone chasing a headline. She looked like someone who'd been waiting. We met in a quiet booth at a diner off Route 60. No camera crew, no microphone, just coffee and a yellow legal pad. She listened more than she talked. When I finished laying out the contracts, the inflated invoices, the vendor overlaps, she nodded slowly. "We've been tracking her for 8 months, Cassidy said. "Tracking who?" I asked. "Delilah Thornfield, and the management shell companies connected to her." She slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts from state filings, LLCs layered on top of each other, shared mailing addresses, shared registered agents. 23 HOA communities, she said. Same pattern. Emergency repairs, sole source contracts, no competitive bidding. "How much?" I asked. "Conservative estimate?" She paused. 4 million. I let that settle. "Then why isn't she in handcuffs?" I asked. Cassidy leaned back. "Because white-collar crime doesn't move fast," she said. Financial fraud cases require forensic accounting, subpoenas, warrants, grand jury review. So the FBI knows? I asked. She nodded. Financial Crimes Unit has a preliminary file open, but knowing and moving are two different things. What are they missing? Leverage. She tapped the folder. Paper crimes are complicated. Defense attorneys stall. Judges require very specific probable cause for search warrants, especially for someone with no prior record. So what qualifies? I asked. Cassidy held my gaze. A felony committed in real time, preferably one tied directly to intimidation, retaliation, or civil rights violations. I felt the shift before she said it. Your ATV, she continued, is registered adaptive medical equipment under ADA protections. Yes, if someone steals it and does so publicly while mocking your disability. That's not just theft, I said quietly. No, she replied. That's felony grand theft combined with civil rights implications. That changes the calculus. I understood immediately. Paper fraud takes time. Public felony creates urgency. Are you saying the FBI would move that night? I asked. I'm saying, Cassidy replied carefully, if Brooklyn Thornfield commits a felony tied to the broader pattern of intimidation, it gives federal investigators probable cause to execute a search warrant much faster. And that warrant would lead to computers, contracts, hard drives, financial records. The room felt smaller. They're waiting for her to make a mistake, I said. Cassidy didn't smile. She already believes she's untouchable. I thought about the beer cans, the live stream, the word toy. She won't see it as a mistake, I said. She'll see it as a victory. Cassidy closed the folder. Then the question becomes, she said quietly, what do you want to do? I stared into my coffee. For weeks they had been pushing, testing boundaries, applying pressure. Now I had something they didn't, structure. If Brooklyn decides to take my ATV, I said slowly, she won't just be stealing a vehicle. Cassidy waited. She'll be triggering a federal investigation. Cassidy nodded once. That, she said, would be the key. As I walked back to my truck, I felt the pieces locking into place. They thought this was about humiliation, about forcing me to bend. They had no idea. They were standing one reckless decision away from federal leverage, and Brooklyn Thornfield loved reckless decisions. It happened at 3:47 a.m. I know that because my phone buzzed once on the nightstand. Motion detected, rear garage. I didn't move right away, didn't sit up, didn't rush to the window. I reached slowly for the phone and opened the live feed. Infrared washed the screen in pale gray. The driveway was empty. Then a shadow moved along the edge of the frame. Small, controlled, not drunk, not stumbling, focused. Brooklyn, hood up, gloves on. She crouched by the side garage door. From her pocket she pulled something thin and metallic. Lockpick set, not improvised, professional. She wasn't there to scare me, she was there to take it. My heart didn't race, it slowed. I watched her work the tension wrench into the lock. 1 minute, 2, 3. She knew what she was doing. No phone out, no live stream, no audience. This was quiet theft, calculated. At minute 4, I reached over and tapped a single button on my phone. Floodlights snapped on, white, blinding. Brooklyn froze. For half a second, she looked directly at the camera. Her face illuminated, clear, undeniable. Then she bolted, across the lawn, over the sidewalk, into the passenger seat of a waiting SUV idling without headlights. The vehicle rolled away before the corner. I sat there in the dark bedroom, phone still in my hand. I replayed the footage once, twice. The angle caught everything. Her face, the tools, her hands on my lock. That was attempted burglary, conspiracy, criminal trespass. I could have called 911. I could have forwarded the video to Cassidy. By sunrise, Brooklyn Thornfield would have been explaining herself to a patrol officer. It would have been clean, quick, contained, and small. I set the phone down. Because this wasn't small. Calling the cops would stop a thief. Letting her go might collapse an empire. That was the calculation. If she got arrested tonight, Delilah would pivot, lawyer up, circle the wagons, play victim, frame it as harassment. But if Brooklyn escalated, if she crossed the line publicly, if she stole the ATV itself, and did it the way she always did, loud, entitled, broadcasting, that wouldn't be a neighborhood dispute. That would be leverage. I checked the lock the next morning. Scratches along the cylinder, fresh, real, proof she had been inches away. The garage door closed behind me with a heavy thud. The ATV sat exactly where it had always been, silent, unmoved, for now. I ran my hand along the handlebars, felt the wiring I had routed myself. She thought she was testing a boundary. She wasn't. She was rehearsing. And now I knew two things for certain. She wanted it, and she believed she could take it. All I had to do was give her the opportunity. The morning after the attempted break-in, I didn't change the lock. I didn't call the police. I didn't confront anyone. Instead, I made coffee, and I waited. By 10 a.m., I rolled the ATV out of the garage. Slow, deliberate, visible. Middle of the driveway, sunlight catching the frame. I taped a clean white board to the handlebars. For sale, big black letters. Impossible to miss from across the street. Right about noon, Carlos pulled up. He stepped out of his truck like he was checking chlorine levels, not staging psychological warfare. "You sure?" he asked under his breath. "Just follow my lead." Then I raised my voice just enough to carry across the quiet street. "I'm done, Carlos. Guy from Mesa's coming tomorrow morning to buy it." Carlos paused half a beat, just enough to make it believable. "Probably for the best," he said louder. "Not worth fighting City Hall." "I'm tired," I said, letting my shoulders drop. "Let them win." Across the street, Delilah's blinds shifted. Barely, but enough. By late afternoon, a dark SUV rolled by twice. Slow, observing, measuring. Good. Let them calculate. Scarcity works best when it feels real. If Brooklyn wanted it for pride, for dominance, for that social media victory lap she loved so much, then tomorrow morning was a deadline. Deadlines make reckless people move fast. As the sun dipped below the rooftops, I rolled the ATV back inside the garage. But I didn't hit the button. I left the garage door wide open. Lights off. The for sale sign still gleaming faintly under the streetlights. From the sidewalk, it looked unattended, accessible, tempting. I walked calmly into the house and shut the front door behind me. No extra locks, no visible changes. The trap doesn't work if the bait looks protected. Inside, I checked my phone. All systems green. Trail cams active, infrared ready, GPS synced, remote kill switch armed, cloud upload verified, redundancy layered on redundancy. I stood just inside the dark garage for a moment, not touching the ATV, just looking at it through the open frame of the door. They thought humiliation would make me leave. Instead, it made me patient. Psychology does more than threats ever could, because now the choice wasn't mine. It was hers. If Brooklyn Thornfield wanted the story to end tonight, all she had to do was walk into the light. It happened at 11:02 p.m. My phone vibrated once on the kitchen table. Not loud, just enough. GPS. Movement detected. I didn't rush, didn't swear, didn't run outside. I walked to the garage. The door was still open. The space where the ATV had been was empty, clean, silent. I looked down at my screen. Live tracking. The dot was already moving east, toward the country club. Of course it was. I didn't call 911. I opened Instagram. Brooklyn Thornfield was live. 9,842 viewers. She had the phone mounted on the handlebars, wind in her hair, laughing. "Guess the crazy vet finally gave up," she said into the camera. "Thanks for the donation, soldier boy." The comments scrolled like wildfire. Queen behavior. Untouchable. Ride it like you own him. She was headed straight for Willowbrook Country Club. String lights, late Friday crowd, golf carts parked in rows, the perfect stage. She wanted witnesses. She wanted humiliation. She wanted dominance. What she didn't understand was that she was also broadcasting felony grand theft of federally classified medical equipment, with commentary, with intent, with identity clearly visible. I grabbed my keys and drove, not fast, just steady. By the time I pulled into the edge of the country club parking lot, I didn't need to look for her. I could hear her. Engine revving, music blasting, laughter echoing. She was doing tight circles near the valet entrance, phone camera pointed at her face. "Look at this thing," she shouted. "He said someone from Mesa was buying it tomorrow. Guess I beat him to it." More laughter. She stood slightly on the pegs as she revved the throttle. "Maybe I'll raffle it off. Charity for wounded feelings." The crowd around her howled. Behind the clubhouse windows, patrons were watching, recording, uploading. Perfect. I stayed inside my truck, watched through the windshield, watched through my phone. GPS confirmed location. Cloud upload confirmed signal strength. Live stream confirmed thousands of witnesses. And then she said it. The line that ended everything. Maybe next time he'll remember his place. Disability-based humiliation. Public. Documented. That was enough. I opened the control app. One red button. Kill switch. I pressed it. On the screen, the RPM dropped instantly. In the parking lot, the engine died mid-rev. The sound cut off like someone pulled the plug on reality. Brooklyn jerked the throttle again. Nothing. She tried again. Silence. The laughter faltered. What the? She slapped the starter. Dead. Confusion spread across her face. And that's when the black SUVs moved. 3 of them. No sirens, no spectacle. Just precision. They rolled in from opposite ends of the lot. Doors opened before the vehicles fully stopped. Men and women in plain clothes but unmistakable posture. FBI, Financial Crimes Unit. Brooklyn Thornfield, one agent called out clearly. Step off the vehicle. Her smile didn't disappear immediately. It flickered, because she still thought this was theater. My dad knows the mayor, she said instinctively. The agents didn't react. Step off the vehicle. Hands visible. She looked around for someone to fix this, for someone to override it, for someone to restore the illusion. There was no one. I stepped out of my truck, slowly. Didn't approach, didn't gloat. I just watched. She stepped off the ATV. The lead agent held up a phone. Miss Thornfield, you are under arrest for felony grand theft, unlawful possession of adaptive medical equipment, and civil rights violations. The word felony hit harder than the engine dying. You can't be serious, she said. The live stream was still running. 9,000 viewers watching in real time. Comments shifting from praise to panic. Is this real? Wait, is that FBI? Oh my God. The handcuffs clicked. Metal on metal. Clear as a church bell in that parking lot. I'm untouchable, she whispered. The agent leaned closer. Not federally. They turned her toward one of the SUVs. Her phone was still broadcasting. Someone in the crowd picked it up. The final image on the live stream. Brooklyn Thornfield in handcuffs. My ATV behind her. Engine silent. Agents surrounding. A federal arrest captured by her own audience. That's when my phone buzzed again. Text from Cassidy. Search warrant executed. Thornfield residence secured. That was the real objective. The public felony had created immediate probable cause. Computers, hard drives, financial records, contracts, everything. I walked toward the ATV. An agent stopped me briefly. Mr. Steele? Yes. Your property will be processed as evidence temporarily. It will be returned. I nodded. That was fine, because the ATV had already done its job. Brooklyn twisted in the back seat of the SUV as the door shut. For a brief moment, our eyes met. No rage, no screaming, just confusion, because the world she believed in didn't work anymore. The SUV doors closed, engines started, and just like that, the illusion of untouchable vanished under federal jurisdiction. I stood there in the soft glow of country club lights. No cheering, no victory dance, just a quiet understanding. Calling the cops would have stopped a thief. Letting her steal it collapsed an empire. And this was only the beginning. By the time I drove back into Willowbrook Estates, the illusion was already unraveling. Red and blue lights reflected off stucco walls and trimmed hedges. Delilah Thornfield's mansion, the $750,000 corner property she liked to call the Standard, looked smaller under federal lighting. 2 black SUVs blocked the circular driveway. An unmarked van sat behind them. Agents moved with efficiency, not urgency. Boxes, hard drives, file crates. The garage door was open. Inside, I could see what most of the neighborhood never had. Stacks of banker boxes, labeled folders, 3 desktop towers, 2 laptops already tagged in evidence bags. This wasn't chaos, it was inventory. Delilah stood at the top of her marble entry steps, phone pressed to her ear. Her posture still rigid, still commanding. I don't care who you have to call, she snapped into the receiver. Put the mayor on, now. No one moved faster because she raised her voice. An agent stepped past her without breaking stride. Another read quietly from a clipboard. Federal search warrant authorized under Title 18. The words were calm, methodical. Delilah turned sharply. You can't just raid my home in the middle of the night, she said. The lead agent held up a folder. Ma'am, this warrant was signed at 6:14 p.m. She glanced at the time on her phone. The moment her expression shifted was subtle, because she understood something. Local connections had not intercepted this. No courtesy call. No heads up, no delay. She dialed again. Judge Watson. The agent didn't look at her. Judge Watson recused himself this afternoon. That landed. Not loudly, but definitively. She lowered the phone slowly, as if recalibrating. Across the street, porch lights began turning on. Doors cracked open. Curtains shifted, and then people stepped outside. Carlos was first, work boots still on, hands in his pockets, watching. Meredith came next, coat over her nightgown, folder tucked under her arm like she had been waiting for this exact moment. Janet Torres stood behind them. Then Bob. Then 3 more families. Not cheering, not clapping, just witnessing. 3 years of silence standing quietly on the curb. Delilah noticed, and that, more than the warrant, unsettled her. "This is harassment," she said, louder now. "You people have no idea what I've done for this community." Carlos finally spoke. "You charged us $800 for a $40 filter." Her eyes flashed toward him. "You signed the contract. Because you said I'd lose every job in this zip code if I didn't." The night air tightened. Meredith stepped forward next. "I taught half the children on this block," she said evenly. "You threatened their parents with liens over landscaping while routing emergency funds to your own companies." Delilah's composure cracked slightly. "This is a smear campaign." The lead agent approached the steps. "Mrs. Thornfield?" Her head turned sharply. "You are not under arrest at this moment," he said calmly. "But based on evidence gathered and charges pending, you are being detained for questioning in connection with conspiracy, wire fraud, and racketeering activity." The word racketeering seemed to echo, because it didn't belong in suburban HOA language. It belonged in federal courtrooms. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," she said. The agent met her gaze. "Ma'am, we do." 2 agents stepped forward, not rough, not theatrical, professional. They turned her gently. Cuffs clicked, clean, controlled. Across the street, no one applauded. They just watched. Because this wasn't revenge, it was correction. As they walked her down the driveway, she saw me, standing near the sidewalk, hands in my jacket pockets. Not triumphant, not angry, just present. She stopped. "For a disgruntled resident," she said tightly, "you've caused a lot of trouble." I stepped closer, but not into her space. "You called my medical equipment a nuisance," I said quietly. "You told your daughter people like me should know our place." She didn't respond. The flashing lights reflected in her eyes. "This," I continued, gesturing toward the agents loading boxes into evidence vans, "is what happens when local power meets federal law." Her jaw tightened. "You think you won?" I shook my head slightly. This was never about winning. I glanced toward the open garage where agents were carrying out hard drives labeled Thornfield Management Accounts. It was about records. They guided her toward the SUV. As the door opened, she made one last attempt. "My daughter will be home by morning," she said. The lead agent paused. "Your daughter was taken into federal custody 45 minutes ago." The final illusion broke right there. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a subtle collapse behind the eyes. They seated her in the back. The door shut. The SUVs began to roll away. The red and blue lights dimmed as they turned the corner. Willowbrook Estates fell quiet again. But it wasn't the same quiet. It was the kind that comes after a storm passes. Carlos exhaled slowly. Meredith adjusted her coat. "No more violation letters," someone behind me murmured. I looked at the mansion. Garage empty, front door ajar, power without insulation. For the first time since I moved into Willowbrook, the neighborhood didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a place. And somewhere, in a federal holding facility across town, Brooklyn Thornfield was probably realizing something she had never been taught. Untouchable is just another word for untested. And tonight, they were tested. 6 months later, Willowbrook Estates looked the same. Same palm trees, same quiet streets, same desert air rolling in at dusk. But it felt different, because fear was gone. The federal case moved faster than anyone expected. Brooklyn Thornfield accepted a plea agreement, felony grand theft, civil rights violation tied to disability harassment. 12 months in federal custody, followed by supervised release and mandatory community service. Her social media accounts disappeared within weeks. Sponsors vanished. The word untouchable followed her in headlines for months. Delilah didn't get a plea. The financial evidence was too clean, too layered, too documented. Conspiracy, wire fraud, racketeering under RICO statutes, 5 years in federal prison, full forfeiture of business licenses, asset seizure, restitution orders that will likely follow her the rest of her life. The Thornfield mansion went into federal receivership before the year ended. It sold quietly, no ceremony, no farewell, just another property on the market. But the real change wasn't in court, it was on Maple Ridge Drive. Emergency HOA elections were held 30 days after the indictments. Carlos Vega ran for president, not because he wanted power, because he wanted invoices that made sense. He won by a landslide. The first board meeting under new leadership was almost awkward in its simplicity. No intimidation, no whispered threats, no sudden violation letters. Just spreadsheets projected onto a wall, transparent budgets, Competitive bidding requirements reinstated. Within 3 months, pool maintenance costs dropped 60%. Security contracts were renegotiated. Emergency repair reserves were audited and stabilized. HOA dues were reduced by $40 per month per household. Not because of miracles, because of oversight. Meredith chaired the ethics committee. Janet oversaw compliance reviews. For the first time in years, people showed up to meetings because they wanted to, not because they were afraid. And the ATV, it came home after the evidentiary hold ended. I rolled it back into my garage on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. No cameras, no audience, just me and the hum of the engine. It felt lighter, not physically, but symbolically. It wasn't a target anymore. It wasn't bait. It wasn't evidence. It was transportation, freedom, independence, exactly what it was built to be. Word spread beyond Willowbrook. Veterans from neighboring towns started reaching out. Stories of their own, HOA disputes, access ramp violations, parking threats, mobility discrimination dressed up as community standards. So I did what the VA counselor once suggested years ago. Build something. I converted half my garage into a small workshop. Nothing fancy. Workbench, lift stand, adaptive control kits. Jake helped me design custom kill switches for mobility scooters. Carlos helped source affordable parts. On Saturdays, veterans would pull into my driveway with wheelchairs, side-by-sides, aging pickup trucks needing hand control modifications. We'd drink coffee, talk shop, fix what needed fixing. Sometimes we talked about Afghanistan. Sometimes we didn't. The point wasn't war stories, it was autonomy. The first time I watched a Marine double amputee take a modified ATV across a dirt trail outside town, he laughed. Not because it was fast, because it was his. That's when I understood something clearly. The Thornfields didn't fall because of revenge. They fell because systems collapse when light hits them. Truth isn't loud. It's documented. It's patient. It's structured. The Willowbrook Veterans Memorial Garden opened that spring, using recovered restitution funds. Accessible paths, benches engraved with service branches, a small bronze plaque that simply reads, "Freedom is built." Every evening now, I take the ATV out at sunset. Desert air smells like sage and warm dust. No cameras tracking it, no one circling the block, just wind and distance. People still ask me sometimes if it was worth it. All the stress, all the risk, all the waiting. I tell them this: calling the cops would have stopped a thief. Letting the system reveal itself changed a community. Power isn't money, it isn't connections, it isn't intimidation. Real power is knowing the law, understanding leverage, and having the patience to let arrogance defeat itself. Brooklyn once said she was untouchable. She wasn't wrong, she was just untested. And some illusions only collapse when someone refuses to look away. As the sun drops behind the Arizona hills, and the engine hums steady beneath me, I think about that first violation letter taped to my door. That white envelope, that quiet insult. They thought they were disciplining a resident. What they really did was wake up a combat engineer. And sometimes, that's all it takes.